Hello. There. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another session of Bright Talks with Sun Life Asset Management. My name is John. Wait. And I am a business development officer from Sun Life. So this afternoon, we will be kickstarting our Fund in Focus series for 2022. So this is our we run three series is here in Sun Life. One is Bright Talks, where we give you different ideas, financial planning sessions, and insights when it comes to investing. We also hold a regular mutual fund 101 session where we give you the rundown basics of what a mutual fund is, how it works, and how you can start. And for our Fund and Focus series, we are going to get into the funds themselves and give you more specific details of what a fund, what our different mutual funds are, and also some insights regarding how to invest in them and how the market is doing in relation to our funds. No? So before we actually get into all of that, we would first like to give you a brief background of our company. So we are again Sun Life Asset Management. It's a bit of a mouthful, so we actually call it SLAMC for short. And we are the investment arm of Sun Life in the Philippines. So Sun Life is usually more known as an insurance company, but SLAMC is actually a pure investments company, no? And we are committed to be every Filipino's partner in their pursuit of prosperity. Okay, so we have been advocating for financial prosperity since the year 2000 through advice, wealth solutions, and service. And we are currently the largest non-bank asset management company, managing 16 Sun Life Prosperity mutual funds with almost 180 billion assets under management. So this is as of December 2021, no? So the Sun Life Prosperity Funds are of course available through around 2,500 mutual fund advisors, 10 bank partners, 4 broker partners, and 1 direct online channel. So SLAMC's fund suite completes the risk spectrum. So this covers the conservative funds like the Sun Life Peso Starter Fund, more moderate funds like the bond and the government securities fund. We also have, also medium-term funds like the balance fund and the achiever funds, and more aggressive funds like the equity and index funds, which we will be discussing this afternoon. The same also goes for the dollar space. So for the dollar funds, we also have a complete fund suite covering conservative funds such as the dollar starter fund, moderate funds like the dollar abundance fund, uh, and then balanced funds like Wellspring, Advantage, and of course, more aggressive funds like the World Voyager Fund. So as mentioned, we will be discussing Philippine peso denominated equity funds today, namely the Standard Equity Fund and the Philippine Stock Index Fund. No? And to help us understand what the Sun Life equity funds are all about, we invited our business development manager, Angel Cruz. She is a business development officer here in Sun Life and also a mutual fund expert. And she will be kindly helping us navigate what equity funds. No, so hello, Angel, are you there?
Hi, John. Good
Hi, Angel.
afternoon.
Good afternoon. Sorry. Siguro to start, no, if we can start, siguro for those who are completely new to the world of mutual funds investing, um, since we will be discussing Philippine equity funds, could you give us an idea what equity actually means? What's it all about?
Okay. John, before I start, no, or before I
Mm.
answer your question, I just want to make sure if you're seeing the screen that I'm sharing.
Yes, I'm
Okay.
able to see it.
Okay. So, going back to your questions, what are equities or what are stocks? No. To simply answer that, a textbook definition of stock is it is a security, that represents a fractional ownership of a company, So that is the textbook definition. But
Mm-mm.
probably for this afternoon and for our discussion of the funds later on, um, to help us better understand what stocks are, probably we can discuss more, on why do companies issue stocks. Okay, so if a company seeks to finance a project or expands its business, it has two ways to raise capital. No?
Mm-mm.
And the first way a company can raise a capital is through debt financing or pangungutang. Yung mga companies, they can actually borrow money from the public, and that is what you call bonds, no? With a promise of paying a fixed interest. So of course, kung mangutang si company, they also promise their lenders a fixed interest as returns. No?
Mm-mm.
And the other way that a company can raise capital is through equity financing. And here, the company is actually opening itself, to the public. It can share its ownership, to the public by selling shares of stocks.
Mm-mm.
So unlike bonds, the main difference really between debt financing and equity financing is, unlike bonds, which comes with fixed interest, a company is not required, to repay the shareholders any interest.
Mm-mm.
So the returns of shareholders in an equity financing are not guaranteed, but depends on the company's performance. So kung ikaw ay co-owner of a company, um, you get to enjoy whatever growth the company does.
Mm-mm.
But on the flip side, you can also share, if you will also share if the company incur losses.
Okay. So basically, if you purchase stocks or equities, you become a part co-owner of the company, no?
Yes.
Is there an institution that regulates the operations of, if I want to buy a stock, is there an institution that does that?
Okay, so here in the Philippines, though, you might just not realize, but there are a lot of companies who have been raising capital through equity financing.
Mm-hmm.
And all these companies who decide uh, to issue shares of ownership are traded in an exchange, or what we call the stock market. And locally, we call our stock market the Philippine Stock Exchange, or the PSE. So if you want to see all the companies traded in our local stock market, you can actually visit their website. No, so we are flashing it here. It's www.pse.com.ph, and this slide actually shows a screenshot, of the website. And if you will just go over the website, you will realize, or you will see, that there are about 300 companies of different industries traded in the exchange. Um, and also the PSE has an index, which is a fixed basket of 30 companies, 30, that's 30 companies
Mm-hmm.
that are carefully selected to represent the general movement of the stock market. And here we call it the PSEI, or the Philippine Stock Exchange Index. So this index indicates a very important headline number, and therefore only the top companies which met a specific set of criteria can be included in the index. So kumbaga, there are 300, more than 300 companies listed in the exchange, but since PSEI represents a very important uh, headline number,
Mm-hmm.
only the top 30 companies can be included in the index.
And they are representative of their, would you say, sectors, no? So actually here,
Yeah,
showing in the screen are the companies in the index.
yeah. So correct, no, that's correct, Jai. The top 30 companies represent different industries in the market, no. And if we look deeper, the PSEI, no, again, you will see the 30 largest Philippine companies, no, such as Ayala, BDO, Jollibee, SM Investments Corporation or SMIC, no. And siguro just a bit of trivia for our audience this afternoon. um, the most recent companies to be included in the index are Wilcon, AC Energy or ASEN, and Converge. No? So these are the three companies who recently met the set of criteria uh, to be included in the index. No? And so as the index represents the general movement of the stock market, and again, it typically reflects investors' sentiment on the state of the economy. Many investment products, no, like mutual funds, use the index as a benchmark
Mm.
or a guide in executing different investment mandates. So in the case of SLAMC, you've shown it a while ago, John. Um, all our equity-laced funds, local
Mm.
equity-laced funds, are invested and measured against the performance of our Philippine Stock Exchange Index.
Mm. So you mentioned actually that the index is from time to time restructured, no? So some of the companies would be removed and then some would then be added, no? Depending on the
As
market
long as,
movements.
yes,
Yeah.
uh, the index actually, it is a fix of 30, no, 30 largest Philippine companies. But before you can belong to the index, again, you have to meet, no, all the requirements set by the
Mm.
exchange.
Mm. So now that thank you for sharing that, Angel, no, and discussing the index. Now that we have discussed what the Philippine Stock Exchange Index is, would it be all right if you could share to us now what an index fund would be then?
Okay. So, sige, no. So, here I think I have the definition of an index fund, no, and let me
Mm.
read it for our audience. So, an index fund is a type of mutual fund with a portfolio constructed to match or track the components of the Philippine market index, no. And it is said to provide broad market exposure, lower operating expenses, lower portfolio turnover, and these funds follow their benchmark regardless of the state of the market.
Mm.
But probably from this definition, no, the words that I want to highlight will be um, match or track the components an, of a financial market. So an index fund actually just match or track, no, it just mirrors the components of the index. So whatever the components or whatever the companies included in the index, an index fund typically invest on those names as well and with the same weights, no? So there are no active calls from fund managers, but again, it just mirrors, no, um, the composition of an index.
Mm.
And another word that I want to highlight from this definition is regardless of the state of the markets. So actually, if an index fund, since it just mirrors the composition of an index, it mimics the benchmark index, no? The behavior or the performance of an index fund should be very similar to the performance of the benchmark index. So, kanina I showed you the website, no, of the Philippine Stock Exchange Index. And if you see there on a particular day that the index returned positive,
Mm.
then an index fund should follow suit, no. It will be also it will also return positive for that particular day. And on the other side, if you happen to visit the PSE website and for that particular day you saw that the index returned negatively or naka-red yung mga numbers, no, then your index fund or an index fund will also be returning negative for that particular day. So regardless of the movement of the market, since it is just mirroring the composition of the index, um, it will just mirror, no, or the returns of the fund will basically the same as the returns of the index. No?
Mm.
So here in Sun Life or in SLAMC, we have this index tracker fund, and we call that the Sun Life Prosperity Stock Index Fund. No, so the objective of this fund is to generate long-term capital growth again by mirroring the performance of the PSEI. So this fund is invested in the top 30 blue chip companies, no, which again composed our Philippine Stock Exchange Index. So you will see there the names like SM, Ayala, BDO, and so on. And here, I am sharing this afternoon is the fun fact sheet. No, this fun fact sheet is actually downloadable. You can download this from the Sun Life website. No, but to talk more about the fund, again, this is a passively managed fund that which means it doesn't have active calls from our fund managers, but just mirrors, no, or typically or mimics the composition of our index or the PSEI. So as you can see here, you can see the top equity holdings, no. So again, you will see the more popular names, and if you can see the weights of these companies, by weights I am pertaining to the percentage, no, the percentage you could see right beside the company name. So for example, SMIC, the weight is 14.78%. No? And that weight represents its exposure to the total index. No? So again, in an index fund, it typically mirrors the equity holdings and the weights of these companies in the index. No? And actually, this fund is very popular to our clients, no, who wants to begin in investing. Uh, and that is probably because the minimum initial investment for this fund is just 1,000 pesos. So
Mm.
again, for more information about this fund, you may download it from our website.
Mm. I think personally, what I like about the index fund is like what you mentioned earlier, since it just mirrors or tracks the Philippine Stock Exchange Index, it's actually also easy for you to sort of get a feel of how your investments are doing, because the PSEI or the index is actually usually reported, diba, in business news, in the television, or even in newspapers. So when you see that the index is being reported as going up, then you would have a feel that your investment has also grown. And also, if it had go down, then you would also know that perhaps your investment had taken some hits as well. No, another
Siguro,
thing.
John, to add lang din, no,
Mm,
before we go on to our discussion, kasi probably some of our audience this afternoon might be wondering why is there a 0.29% cash or other liquid
mm,
assets in the portfolio. This is actually for liquidity, no. While the fund can invest 100% of its portfolio in the index, we also set aside a very small portion, no, of the portfolio in cash to be able to service redemption. So
mm.
for clients who will redeem their shares from shares of this fund, we also have that cash, no, to service or to fund the redemption request from the clients.
Mm. This is a good feature of a mutual fund, no? Because mutual fund companies are actually required to redeem or return to or buy back the shares that their clients bought. And going back to the index, it's basically just like buying the top 30 companies, no, established companies in the Philippine market. So siguro going more into the passively managed fund feature of the index, can we please further elaborate on this? What's the difference between, let's say, a passively managed and then an actively managed fund?
Okay. So, sige. In investing kasi, John, no, we have what we call passive management,
Mm,
and the goal there in a passive management, no, is again to mirror the benchmark, no.
mm,
When you say kasi passive, parang you're just you're just mirroring or mimicking the benchmark, no. You do not have really like um flexibility to do calls based on your own outlook, no. So again, in a passive management, the goal really is just to mirror the benchmark. And in this case nga, as I've discussed is the index fund, which is a passively managed fund. The goal is really to mirror the PSEI and and give you know the feel nga of the movement of the index. And we also have what we call an active management, no. So a fund that is actively managed has actually more flexibility in picking stocks where to invest in, no. The fund manager is not limited from investing in index companies, and they are also not limited, no, from mirroring the company's weights in the index. So let's say for an example, our fund managers have positive outlook on SM. No? For example lang, their outlook on SM is it will have a good upside, no, for
mm,
this year. So a passively managed fund can only invest in SM up to the same amount it represents in the index. So same
mm.
weight, no, same
Yeah.
weight. It will just mirror, no. But an actively managed fund can put more investment in this company. Pwede silang lumagpas dun sa weight ni SM sa index. And if that is their of course, if that is their conviction call, no. And probably another example that I can share to our audience is uh, Mondenisin, no. Si
Mm,
Mondenisin, uh, it it uh, it had its IPO or initial public offering last year, no. So bagong-bago siya in the stock market. Uh, so si Monde is actually not part of an index of the
mm,
PSEI. Hence, a passively managed fund, which is the index fund, will not have an exposure to Monde. But again, if the fund manager thinks that Monde has upside, then the actively managed fund can invest into it kahit
mm,
wala siya sa index. So I think this is where the professional management comes in, no.
mm.
Investors of an actively managed fund can leverage on the expertise of the fund managers to do the stock pickings for them.
Yeah. And also the research that comes into it, no.
Yes.
Let's say, as you mentioned, Mondenisin, they're very well known in making the
Lucky me.
Lucky Me, the
Mm-mm.
so they might be one of those companies that benefited from the lockdowns, the hoarding of the groceries, no.
And even in this coming election, di ba?
Yeah,
Probably the candidates would hand out, grocery items,
groceries.
and probably and most probably that basket will contain a product of Mondenisin, no. So
Mm,
there, you're right. If there is a good outlook, no,
mm,
on a company such as Mondenisin, then an actively managed fund can participate into it.
mm. As opposed to the passively managed fund, which will have to stick to the list of 30 companies in the index.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so again, SLAMC has a passively managed fund, which is the Sun Life Index Fund. And well, do we also have an actively managed fund?
Of course, no, John, I think, again nga, yun nga, sinabi ko kanina, I think that's where the
Mm,
professional management will come in. No? So there's where the added value of Slamsy will come in. No? Yes, in Slamsy, we have both passive and active fund. No? Again, for passive, we have the PSE Index Fund. And for actively managed fund naman, we have the the Sun Life Prosperity Philippine Equity Fund. No? So this fund is an actively managed fund which employs an enhanced indexing strategy. That's what we call the strategy of the fund, no? Enhanced indexing. And this strategy means that the fund's holding are almost the same. Almost, no, not I'm not saying exactly the same, no. Almost the same with the index fund, but you will see a slight difference in terms of weights, no.
Mm.
So I think the difference in weights actually reflects the fund manager's active calls, no. And again, these active calls are based on research, market trends, and other economic factors. So, um, and siguro to add to that, no, aside from the weights, an actively managed fund can also invest in second liners, no. So yun nga yung sinasabi mo kanina, no, like Mondanisin
Mm.
na wala naman sa index. But our actively managed fund like the equity fund can actually invest on those names, no. So if here again I'm showing the fund fact sheet as of December 2021, you will see the investment mix here, and you will notice that there is exposure, no, to, or the fund is invested in real estate investment trust or REITs. So um, this is a perfect example of the active calls, no, John. Si
Mm.
index kasi walang REITs but
Mm.
but our fund managers have their um, good outlook or positive outlook on REITs. That's why you will see REITs in the equity fund.
Mm.
And so, taking a closer look lang, no, on the equity holdings, again, you will probably see the same companies, but of different weights, no. So, for example, CSM in index fund, SM has a weight of 14.78%, whereas in equity fund, it only has a 10.73% weight, no. So, same goes with SM Prime, Ayala Land, Ayala Corp, BDO, BPI, PLDT, ICTC. And again, what I highlight in the previous slide is the REITs, or the Real Estate Investment Trust, no, where um, the index fund doesn't have exposure into it, but equity fund has
Mm.
1.33%. No?
At least for the index, no, the list of the 30 companies, that's actually public information, no. What are the advantages, or what would you say to someone who is, probably looking, asking themselves, what's the advantage of investing in an index fund or an equity fund versus directly investing in these stocks themselves, diba? If they have a broker account,
Mm-hmm.
what's the difference, or yeah, what would you say would be the advantage or the disadvantage of investing in a mutual fund?
I think there is a lot, no, John. But siguro for this afternoon, let's just focus on probably the top three most important key advantages of investing in a fund and an equity fund, no, rather than going directly to investing in stocks, no. And siguro the first thing that I want to highlight is professionally managed. Again, for actively managed fund, you get to leverage on the expertise of fund managers, no. There is actually a team dedicated to study the movement of stock market and the individual companies, no. And really their job is to pick stocks for you, no. And kasi if just for better appreciation of our audience, no, the stock market is open from 9 a.m. to on a normal scenario, no, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. no, and during that time from 9 to 3 p.m. um stock prices really can go up and down. No? And if you are not someone who can dedicate your day um, to monitor the market, or let's say you have your 9 to 6 um, job, um, then there is really that difficulty in monitoring the difficulty in monitoring stock prices, no. But investing in an equity fund, you get to leverage on the expertise of the fund managers, no. Their 9 to 6 job is really to watch the market and do the stock picking for you, no. And also this investment or this fund managers, they also have that working relationship with the companies traded in the exchange, no. So they can actually meet with the CFOs, with the CEOs, just to have um, discussions on what are the prospects of the company, and based on, and from that relationship, no, they can um, support their research, no. And that is something that an ordinary Filipino do not have. Even myself do not have that, no.
Mm-mm.
And probably second is the diversification, no. Um, kanina you see the top holdings of the equity fund, no, and actually we're just seeing that, we're just showing the top 10, but uh, to my knowledge, no, there are about more than 30 names in the equity fund, and there are 30 names in the index fund, no. So by investing in an equity laced fund, or an equity fund, you are actually automatically invested in the biggest public companies in the Philippines, no. This means you have that instant diversification in terms of stock holdings. And you will get this for as low as 1,000 pesos, no, as opposed
Mm-mm.
to going direct investment to stocks, wherein you will need more than, or probably roughly 100,000, no, to be invested in all index companies. Kasi if you have, kasi in index, there is what we call board lot, no. You
Mm-mm.
can't just buy one share of SM. You can't just buy one share of BDO. You can't just buy one share of any company, no. There is
Mm-mm.
actually a minimum required number of shares to buy a specific company. And for you to be able to buy all the 30 companies in the index, from the latest calculation that we did, no, John, you'll probably need about 97,000 pesos, no, just to be
Mm-mm.
exposed to these companies. And lastly is liquidity, no. When you hold a stock kasi, you cannot just sell it, no, anytime that you want, or in any in the price that you like, no.
Mm-mm.
Before you can actually sell a stock, there should be a willing buyer to purchase your shares. So if there are no buyers, then the problem is you will not be able to sell all your stocks, no. But in equity funds, in mutual funds, the funds stand ready, to service your redemptions. That's why you will also see that there is a cash component, no, in the portfolio, because the funds are standing ready, no, to service clients redemption anytime, and you do not need to look for a buyer. And also, no, these equity funds do not have holding period. So anytime that you would like to redeem your shares, you can do so, no.
Mm-mm.
You just have to submit your redemption orders, and the fund will be able to fund your, or to service your redemption request.
Mm-mm. And actually for Sun Life, it's very convenient. If you have access, actually if you have an account with Sun Life, you'll be able to get an access to our online client portals as well as the mobile app. All you'll have to do is submit a request for redemption there, and then once it is processed, it will be directly credited to your bank account. So it's very easy. You don't have to sign anything. Don't have to go out of your house. It'll be credited to your account. So siguro also we can add that as another key advantage, no, also the convenience, no,
Mm-mm.
of investing. So siguro well, these are very attractive features, no, and I hope that our attendees for this afternoon are already considering investing or getting into the Philippine equity funds that Sun Life has. So aside from we've been hearing all good things, no, are there also other considerations that should be accounted for before actually getting into the equity fund?
Well, actually, that's a good question, no, John. Kasi we have to be blunt about it, no, that, investing in equity funds is really not for everyone, and it's not for all your money. No,
Mm-mm.
we
Correct.
we we really do not encourage our clients to put all their money in the equity in an equity or an index fund. So if I may share some considerations, no, that you have to take into mind, no, before investing in equity or index fund is probably you have to check your investment horizon, your risk appetite, and your financial situation. So this is the things that we want you to think about, no, before jumping into the decision of putting money in an equity fund. So um I guess this fund is suited for clients with first is with long time horizon, and someone who can accept high levels of volatility, and someone who can set aside money for the long term. So again, no, we do not really encourage clients to put all their money in this type of fund. But again, for your long term uh, goals and long term needs, no, this is something that you have to consider as well, kasi it can give you that potential higher return. And
Can
probably to um yes, John, before I
actually
go
I
on.
was going to ask maybe if you could give us like an example. Actually, the slide you showed,
Mhm.
if you could give us an example of how volatile an equity fund
Mm,
could be.
yeah, perfect. No, so yeah, no, that's actually my next slide. So we say that these are the considerations because of the fact that stocks or equity investments bear risk. No, so
Mm-mm.
here we're showing, no, a price chart of the PSEI from 2020 until 2021. So especially during this year, no, we've seen how volatile the market was, no. So yeah, and if you can see in your screens how the market behaved, no, during the past year, you can really see, no, that the price can go up and down every
Mm-mm.
single day, no. And so we say that these those that I've mentioned really are something that you have to consider. Of course, your time horizon, no, you have to really stay the course,
Mm-mm.
no, for potential higher return. Kasi if you will just magnify or look into a specific period,
Mm-mm.
um you will just feel the the volatility of the
Mm-mm.
market, and worst case, baka malugi ka if
Mm-mm.
you have that short term investment horizon lang kasi
Mm-mm.
because of the volatility. But
I agree, and
if
of course, what we are highlighting here is, diba, if you had invested during the
yes.
lowest of the market, but actually, on the flip side of that, imagine if you were investing before the market crash, diba? Ito around January 2020, and you invested
Mm-mm.
at around the level of 7,800, and then it went and become March 2020, diba? Yung ano mo parang na half yung money mo. So those are
Mm-mm.
actually the ups and downs that the equity I mean equity investors would have to understand, no. And of course, in
Yes.
hindsight, 'di ba? What would you have done, 'di ba? Would you have redeemed because na shock ka na, or would you just have stayed the course or even
Mm-mm.
added more, diba? And then wait it out until makapag-recover yung market. Which is why again, it's also important that we are uh we are sharing the importance of having again a long-term investment
Mm-mm.
horizon when
Yes.
getting into the equity funds.
Yes, yes, that's correct, no, John. And yun nga, as we've mentioned, no, investing in equities, no, or index, you also have to be able to accept volatility. Kasi you're
Yeah.
right, eh. If I am an investor and I didn't know what I went into or invest
Mm.
into, tapos nakita ko na nag-volatile, na may volatility, bumagsak yung pera ko kinabukasan, then probably I would panic, 'di ba? And
Yeah.
sell based on my emotions.
Mm.
But if I have known it and from the very start that the product can be very volatile, then it will be no, it will make sense to me na
Mm.
to stay in the course and stick to my investment goal, no.
Mm.
No? And also again, the other consideration is we want or someone, no, we want someone na the fund is for someone who can really set aside money for the long term. Kasi
Mm.
just imagine if you put your emergency money in this type of investment or this fund.
Yeah.
Baka kung kailan dumating yung emergency, baka doon uh, mas mababa yung value
Mm.
ng money natin. So,
Emergency fund, or imagine kung ano, 'di ba? May kakasal ng March 20 tapos yung wedding fund nila nasa ano
oo,
nasa
naging
equity
intimate
fund.
na.
Oo. Oo.
From 200 guests down to 50 kasi yun na lang yung kaya ng budget. So,
Correct.
yeah, it's really setting aside money for the long term because
Mm.
investing in this type of product is really for the long term. And that is why also we are saying that or we are encouraging our clients to have a goal-based investing, no? Um and by goal-based investing, we mean that it's the way to look at your portfolio, no?
Mm.
Na I'm setting aside this money because this money is for my retirement or
Mm.
because I have a plan to purchase a house 5 to 10 years from now, or I'm setting aside this money for my children's education.
Mm.
So that's also one thing, no, that we encourage clients before investing in equity fund is to match your investment with a long-term goal. That's
Mm.
para you will also be guided and your investment will also be aligned, no, to your goals, and this investment will take care of your goals when they come due.
Mm. And that's also what we really encourage here in Sun Life, no? Having goal-based investments so that you know what these investments are for. Because if you're just, let's say, putting money and then you don't really know where it's for, what it's for, may tendency kasi na okay, if you need something, then you would probably get some amount from it. Pero if you know that it's for your retirement or for your kids college fund, then you would think twice kasi you know that it's for a specific purpose, and if it's not going to that specific purpose, then medyo ano yun, may challenge doon because you're not sticking to your investment plan. Okay,
Yes.
so siguro question ko now is how have the Philippine equity funds of Sun Life performed lately? Siguro for the benefit of our attendees din.
Okay. So, I think I have here the fund performances, no, for both the index fund and the equity fund. So year on year, the equity or the index fund returned 6.14%,
Mm.
while year to date it's returning positive 2.01%. No? And on equity, the equity fund naman, year on year it's doing 6.93%, and year to date it's doing 1.33%. And siguro I just want also to highlight that this is also one of the advantages, no, investing in a fund. What you see here, the returns here are already net of any fees, no. So um, whatever the return of the fund is, that's what client will get, no? Wala na
Mm,
po tayong mga withholding tax,
mm,
wala nang mga any other fees to pay for. Uh, the funds that you see here is what our clients enjoyed.
mm. Oh, well, of course, siguro one would think na um the 1 year and the year to date returns are positive because we've been coming from a pandemic, and then hopefully we've been slowly recovering, no. So
Mm-hmm.
and then we also showed yung chart na actually the bottom of the pandemic, or bottom of the COVID hit on the market has was actually lit since last March 2020, March, around
Mm-mm.
March April 2020. So maybe some are asking, is still a good time to enter the market, or do we wait for another plague ba, or
Wag naman na sana, no, John? Oo. Okay.
yeah.
Mm. Sige. So, probably, I think I think I have a few slides here that could give you some market drivers to look forward to, no? And um, while we acknowledge that the market has really rebounded na from the March 2022, yung graph natin kanina, John, it showed 50% recovery, no, since the
Mm,
pandemic hit us. But I think there are still pockets of opportunities, no, to
yeah.
look forward to for the Philippine Stock Exchange Index, or the stock market as a whole. And probably first is the election year, no. So we know naman that 2022 is an election year, no. It's a presidential election year, no. And based on history, or historically, any presidential election year has been positive for the stock market. So we've seen it in Ramos time, ERAP, Arroyo, and Aquino, where the index returned positively, with an exception with in the Duterte's presidency, no. But I think if you will look into what happened during that year, you would still see positive
Mm,
returns. No, it's just so happened that towards the end of the year, uh, there were developments outside of the Philippines that affected our index, no. But generally speaking, no, and if you can see it here in the slide, any presidential election here has been very positive for the PICO, or the PSPI. And that is because during elections, there are a lot of spendings, no. So
mm,
just imagine how presidential candidates campaign way before this pandemic happened. They go all around. All the presidential candidates go around the country um, to hand out let's say uh, food
mm,
to the rallies, no. And probably their teams, they also sponsor the things that they need to campaign, no. So there are a lot of spendings, no, during presidential election, and that spending is good, no, to simulate or stimulate the market. That's why we're seeing positive returns. And this year, despite the landscape of election being different, no, from the previous elections, we still see positive outlook on certain companies, especially the consumer staples, no, that would benefit on the presidential elections or the campaign period. And the next market driver is the reopening of the economy, no. So we've been hearing last year, um, or we've been wanting or anticipating reopening of the economy last year, but unfortunately, it didn't happen that year, no. But this year, I think this is something that we can look forward to, despite the recent surge, no, we saw in Omicron cases. So here in the chart that I'm flashing, if you could look at the blue line or the blue chart,
mm,
December 2021, this actually represents the number of new cases, of new COVID cases. No,
mm,
December 2021, if you could remember, uh, our new COVID cases were very low. No, parang less than 1,000. And so the government allowed the public to move freely. But come 2021 or 2022, January 22, ayan na, nararamdaman na natin si Omicron, di ba? So our cases were high as 30,000 new cases, 34,000. We were making new highs during the first part of this month, no. But despite the surge, I think what is important, what is more important, no, to look at is the ICU utilization rate. So if you could see here, the ICU utilization rate during from what's this January 7 as of January 17, 2022, the ICU utilization rate is just 58%. Oh. And if you will compare that from the ICU utilization rates on the past months, that is very low. No, that's actually not even um, on the level that government considered as moderate. So that's why also na kahit ang taas ng surges ng COVID, the government is not imposing stricter lockdowns. No, we will remain at level 3, and starting tomorrow, we will be shifted to level 2. No, so I think that's a positive development. No, so despite the surges, people can move free or are freer, more free to move. No, and as people move, and as we are not restricted, no, or mobility is not restricted, then it could also promote spending and consumption, especially in our country, which is a very consumption driven, no. And that will lead to the reopening of economies, no. And probably the last market driver that I can share this afternoon is the return of foreign flows. So for the information of our participants this afternoon, hindi lang po Filipinos ang pwedeng mag-invest in our stock markets. In our stock market, even the foreign investors, no, they can also get into our market and invest in the different companies that I've shown a while ago. But here, if you could see in the chart that on the right side, the foreign ownership, no, in 2013, we were actually hitting almost 32% foreign ownership. But since then, there was a decline of foreign ownership, and we hit the bottom in 2021 with 24.7% foreign ownership. But just recently, or during the tail end of 2021, we saw that the foreign ownership is starting to pick up. No, right now it's at about 27%. No, and this also shows the renewed confidence, no, of foreign investors into our local market, and that this should also drive the positive outlook in our market.
Do we
So
have
I guess
do you have
that is the three main drivers, no, John,
drivers?
that I wanted
So
to share.
given those drivers, do we have any forecasts? I know it's a bit early pa in the year, no, but do we have any siguro forecast for at least for the PSEI or
Okay.
for the year?
So, given those market drivers, no, our in-house forecast for the index is 7,900 or 7,900. And if we will compare it to the current levels, I think right now we are at around 7.2 to 7.3, no. Our in-house target of 7.9 implies 9% upside for those who will be coming in during this time. So there, our in-house forecast is 7.9, and that offers about 9% upside from current levels.
So we're around 7,300. So, diba, well, there you have it, no. There is still, of course, positive upside I think especially if you look at to keep it simple na lang, no, if you have a long term investment horizon, and then just looking at where the PSEI level was before the pandemic hit, where it went after we received the pandemic, where we have recovered so far, and also the market drivers that we have discussed. And of course, if you have a positive outlook on the economic growth story of the Philippines, then I would say that the Philippine equity funds are really something for you to consider, no, as one of the assets in your portfolio. Okay, so with that, thank you very much, Angel. We'll be calling Angel back after a few minutes for our Q&A. But siguro for now, we'll just have a short um, not intermission, but we'll have a short learning check actually of the discussion, no, of whether, well, hopefully we were able to share something new with you and some insights with you this afternoon. No? Okay, so I will be launching 3 questions via the call, and we'll give you siguro mga around a minute or two to answer. No? So learning check question number one is, equity represents the value of the shares issued by a company. So true or false? Excuse me. Learning check question number two, how many companies are listed in the Philippine Stock Exchange Index? So ano siya, to be clear, it's the Philippine Stock Exchange Index, not the Philippine Stock Exchange as a whole. So is it 15, 30, 100, or 500? And then last learning check question that we have is, equity funds are traditionally considered as long-term investments. So is it true or false? There. Okay, so siguro 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There. So I'll share the results, no? Number one, question number one, equity represents the value of the shares issued by a company. So this is actually true. So yeah, kung ano yung value ng stock mo, that's what the equity, or that's what equity represents. No? Number two, how many companies are listed in the stock exchange index? So in the index itself, there are 30, but so the answer is 30. Pero sa stock exchange as a whole, there are around 300, or a little bit more than 300 actually. And then question number three is, equity funds are traditionally considered as long-term investments. So yes, that is the classical perspective. No, it's really for long-term investments. Although of course we have day traders, but really traditionally it's considered as a long-term investment. Okay, so thank you for joining our learning check session para lang makumusta kayo at magising din tayo. And I'm very glad that a lot of you, most are actually got it correct. No? So siguro we'll just share some key takeaways lang regarding the Sun Life Prosperity Stock Index Fund. Again, it's a passively managed fund that just seeks to track the performance and the investment companies in the Philippine Stock Exchange Index. It's for investors with a high risk tolerance, especially with the volatility that it brings to your portfolio. And it will be very good, especially if you would have a long-term investment horizon. On the other hand, naman, we also have the Sun Life Prosperity Philippine Equity Fund, which is an actively managed fund, meaning um, our fund managers could actually add more than the companies in the stock exchange index, and would also, they can also edit according to what they prefer or their conviction calls the percentages, no, or the factor of how much should be allocated into this particular company versus another, and not just be limited to, again, the index, no. Sun Life by itself practices the enhanced indexing strategy, and also it's also a long-term investment, no. So both the minimum initial, if you're not yet a client, or additional investment if you're already a client, for both of these funds is only 1,000 pesos. And again, for that you're already diversified into the list of companies that it invests in. And also it's a being a mutual fund, it's a very liquid asset. So if in case you would need to redeem the fund, then it will be serviced directly to you. Oops. Okay, so go digital with Sun Life Asset Management. If you are now interested in investing, if you are a new client, you can just visit, you can take a screenshot of this, no? You can visit bit.ly/Samsi online, and then you can apply for a mutual fund with Sun Life at our website. Or if you are an existing client, you can top up using our client portal. No? So we have several programs for you, the online bills payment feature, the online payment page, and also the Stamsy Auto Invest. So you can visit these links for more details on that. We'll also show you a video on how you can actually invest or open an account with Sun Life using the website.
Want to start investing in the Sun Life Prosperity Funds? It takes only a few steps. Go to www.sunlifefunds.com to know the different types of mutual funds available. When you find the mutual fund that fits you best, click Buy Now. Accomplish the online application page. Upload a clear photo of a valid government ID with signature. Read the terms and conditions. Click Agree to accept. Review your order details. Select the mode of payment. That's it. Easy, right? A confirmation of your subscription will be sent via SMS or email. Congratulations! You're now officially a Sun Life Prosperity Funds investor.
Hello, John. I think we cannot hear you.
Hello. Okay, medyo ang dami ko na palang sinabi. Okay, what I mentioned was it's we're now at the tail end of our discussion, no, and we can call, I'm calling you back now here. Wait lang,
Just
natawa
in
ako.
time.
Just in
Just
time. We
in
can call
time.
you back to help us. No? So siguro, let's just get into it. We have the first question here for the specific fund, like index fund. The bigger the fund size, the bigger the potential return. So, would you agree with that? Would you say?
I you mean fund size if Justin is pertaining to the AUM of the fund, no? Actually it helps, but uh ultimately it will really depend on the performance of the market, and for
Yeah.
the equity fund naman, it will really depend, no, ultimately on the calls of our fund managers, no. So the return of these funds will really depend on those rather than more than the size of the fund.
Mm. Pero siguro without getting into it too much, no. Actually, usually smaller funds are more agile. But when it comes to index kasi, as Angel mentioned, it would largely more depend more on the market returns of the companies it's investing to, rather than the size of the
The
fund
size of the fund,
actually.
correct.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Okay. So siguro yung next question here is, pwede po, this is more of like more on who can invest in the fund, no? Pwede po ba mag-invest ang minor sa Philippine Equity Fund or sa mutual fund?
Yes, they can actually invest, no, as long as they have, I think it ITF, no, or interest for it should be the parents of the minor should be also invested, and we call that arrangement ITF. Eh.
Hmm.
There are parang additional forms lang, no, to fill out if you want to include the minor in the investment.
Hmm. So, for mutual funds, you need to be 18 years old to invest. So if you're not yet 18 years old, we also have interest for arrangements wherein, as Angel mentioned, the parents first would be the fund owner, and then once the kid has turned 18, or once they has reached the age of 18, then it could be transferred to them naman. Okay. I'm looking for other questions here, no? Since the equity fund is an actively managed fund, does it have any additional charges compared to the index fund?
Okay, so this is a good question, no, John. Yes, to answer the question, yes, there is an additional charges, no, charged by the index fund and active managed fund and compared to index fund, no. So for the information of our listeners, the management fee of our index fund is 1%, and the management fee of our or of our actively managed fund or the equity fund is 2%.
Mm.
So again, the difference, the difference in the charges really is to pay for the additional management that our fund manager is putting in the equity fund. No, so there, 1% for index and 2% for the equity fund.
Okay, thank you, Angel. The next question that we have here is there a possibility that we increase the fixed income mix during the bear market?
Okay. So of course, for I know for our passively managed fund, which is our index fund, it will not invest in fixed income, no, kasi
Mm.
as we've discussed earlier, it will just really mimic the composition of the index, and as we all know naman, there are no fixed income
Correct.
instruments, no, in the index. So um in any market scenario, there will be no exposure to fixed income for the passively managed fund. For the actively managed fund naman that we've discussed, the equity fund, the mandate of the fund is to be invested fully on equities.
Mm.
No? So also, despite the market scenario, you will not see the equity fund um, putting exposure to income instruments.
Mm.
But we have products in SLAMC that can invest, or we have products or funds in SLAMC that have mandates, no, to invest in fixed income securities. Our balanced fund, no, can actually invest both in equities and fixed income. So if you want to learn more about um, the balanced funds that we have, stay tuned. Just stay tuned. No, we will be having a similar program, a fund and focus that will be discussing our balanced fund. So you will also learn, how does the fund manage, or how does the fund um, move from one asset class to another.
Mm. Correct. That's actually our topic for spoiler alert. Our topic for the next month. So we'll share with you the invites for that as well. We ang daming questions. I don't think we'll be able to answer them. Siguro we'll take mga around 3 to 5.
Sure.
Can we ask for a copy of the recording of the session? Yes, we'll share the recording link with the attendees. And then, how long would you say is long term when it comes to long term? Is there a rule of thumb when it comes to long term? Ako personally, when I say long term, mga around 5 to 10 siguro. Basta more than 5 years for me personally. How about you, Angel?
Personally, I'll share the same answer, John. No? 5 to 10 years is long term for me. But then again, we go back to what we really promote. No,
Yeah.
it's really to have like a goal based investing
Mm.
mindset. No, so if we talk about retirement, for example,
Yeah.
then my long term for a retirement is wait, ilang taon na ba ako? Mga about 15 years
Mm.
probably, no? So that the the long-term horizon will really depend, no, on on the goal that you are trying to achieve for that particular investment.
Thank you, Angel. Siguro ito mas ibang question naman. What we've discussed today is more on the Philippine local equities, no. But Sun Life would actually have the global funds. Very recent, well, not recently, but we also have the product what that we call World Equity Index Feeder Fund, which is where our clients can actually invest their peso, but it's invested in global companies like Apple, Amazon, Facebook, etc. No? So, when it comes to that, if our listeners are able to are choosing between global versus local,
Mhm.
would you say there is a better option between the two, or what would you recommend to them?
Okay. I think what I can tell our listeners is to have an exposure to both markets, no, the global and the local markets, because um there is a lot of opportunities, no, outside the local market, and especially right now that the world is facing a pandemic, no, uh, different countries tend to have different recovery stories, no. So while it's good that you invest in our local market, because of course it's more no, uh, it's more relatable, 'di ba? We know by heart which companies our index is invested at or exposed at. It's also good, no, to diversify outside the Philippines, because there are a lot of opportunities that can be found, or that other countries can offer. And also another reason is there are also sectors available globally that are not available locally, no,
Mm.
John. Um, Top of mind, I can say that technology sector, which when we say technology, these are your Facebook, your Netflix, your Alibaba, you know. Unfortunately, locally, we don't have a sector for technology, you know. And alam naman
Yeah.
natin that the technology sector really benefited from the pandemic. So,
Mm.
by having an investment globally can give you exposure to um, sectors that are not present here in the Philippines.
Mm. I agree, Angel. I think personally it's really about um asset allocation as well. Siguro what I could recommend also is if you don't have an equity fund, a local equity fund yet, you can start with that. Especially with Sun Life, yung minimum kasi ng equity funds natin is just 1,000 pesos. But the World Equity Index Feeder Fund, 50,000 yung minimum initial. No? So
Mm.
you could start with the local first, and then once you are comfortable with it na, then you can also try the other funds, no. But again, making sure that tama yung financial status mo, like you already have your emergency fund, and
Correct.
the money is really for long-term investment. Um, Siguro very in a similar breath na rin siguro, another question that we have here is, equity, or should we go for equity funds or baka bond funds naman? Which is
Oh,
better?
okay. So I guess equity fund and fixed income fund or a bond fund, they have different parang purpose in your portfolio, no. Uh, Both will really complement naman your portfolio, but bond funds kasi or fixed income funds are more on the conservative, more on the stable side of of the risk spectrum. So, uh, and the equity fund naman, kahit naman mas volatile siya, if you will look at the past performances of equity funds, they tend to give you the higher returns naman. But again, yung volatility, mas mataas talaga sa equities, no? Kasi in nature, mas risky naman talaga ang equities compared to fixed income products. But then again, if you can have both in your portfolio, then it could give both can complement your whole portfolio. The bond fund can add more stability to your portfolio, while the equity funds naman can potentially give you higher return than bond funds over the long term.
Okay. Thank you, Angel. We have some more on fund management questions. So I'll try to answer this naman.
Sure.
Is it a one-time investment of the minimum, which is 1,000 pesos investment, or do we have to add the investment monthly? Thank you. So actually, the one-time investment, it could be just a one-time investment. It will be up to the client. So of course, the bigger the capital is, kasi yung returns naman natin in percentage, no. So the bigger your base is, that's also how you return. Pero kasi it's unlike the regular insurance products, which is talagang you have to pay monthly, no. It could be one time, and then if whenever you have the whenever it makes sense for you, then you can add on to it. Someone's also asking, does it have a maximum amount of investment? No po. So, up to how much, diba, makes sense for you, or up to how much that you could invest, then you could actually invest it sa equity fund natin. And then last, more fund management question. How many times can we redeem in a year? Are there any charges? Okay, for in terms of the redemption, of course, as long as if you are in redeeming in tranches, as long as you still have a fund there, then you can redeem. And then there's no redemption fee when it comes to the number of times you are redeeming. Pero we have what we call sales load. So depending on if you are front end or back end. If you're front end load, wala ka ng redemption fee. But if back end load, then you may have a redemption fee depending on the year that you are redeeming. But we tackle this more on the Mutual Fund 101. So if you're not yet familiar with that, we'll also share the link to our next Mutual Fund 101 session with you. Okay? So siguro last two questions na lang for you, Angel, kasi
Sure.
medyo nag-overtime na tayo. Is actually medyo similar to. Can you see?
I think there is a question, John, no,
Okay.
from one of our participants. Let me just read it. Other
Sure.
than the difference in terms of weight, percentage exposure to the companies from PSEI, for equity fund, the selection of list of company from the PSEI is not limited to the top 30. So yes, now to answer the question, the answer is yes. As I've shared a while ago, no, the equity fund being an actively managed fund, it is really not constrained, or it's not limited, no, from investing on the top 30 or the 30 companies in the index. It can actually invest in second liner stocks, or those companies that are not index names. And one example that I've shown a while ago is our equity fund has investment or exposure on REITs, or real estate investment trusts, whereas an index fund doesn't have an exposure to that. So that is where, some of the that's one of the differences, no, of our index fund and our actively managed fund. It's not really limited to the top 30.
Okay. So would you say one is better than the other? Kasi may nag-ask din dito eh. For someone who is just starting out now, should they invest in the actively managed or the passively managed fund?
Uh, well, for me, it it also, I know, no, it also both also complements your portfolio, kasi you can always have that strategy of having an index fund in your portfolio as your passive investment, or your core
Mm,
holdings, no, kasi it just mirrors the index. But if you want an alpha or a kicker, no,
mm,
in your portfolio, then that's where the value proposition of the equity fund comes in, no. It adds a kicker to your portfolio. Kumbaga, may additional spice ka if you put into
yeah.
equity.
Probably start with the index fund kasi it's more, well, ako personally, it's easier to monitor. But then, just to add flavor siguro, you can add the equity fund. All right. That's unfortunately that's it. That's all the time that we have for today. No. We still have actually a lot of questions, but medyo hindi na natin siya mako-cover. Mag-overtime na talaga tayo. Thank you very much, Angel, for joining us this afternoon, and also for our attendees. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. I'll just be promoting some of our next activities, no. So for those, actually a lot of questions that that you were asking will be answered in our mutual funds 101 seminar. So you can register for free, no. So this online webinar actually tackles what a mutual fund is, the basics, and yung mga fees that comes with yung fund management, no. So our next session is actually on Feb 11, and you can register for that. And we'll also be sharing the link in your email, no. And and then as mentioned, um, our next fund in focus session is on the Sun Life Balance Fund. So this is a fund, we already gave a sneak preview of it earlier. It's a fund that invests both in equity and fixed income, and then that will be on February 28th. So when you close this seminar or this window, a survey will actually be popping out. We'd love to hear from you. If you could answer that, please, that would be greatly helpful for us. There's also a field there where it asks you if you have any other topics that you would like us to have a discussion on, that will help us plan our next set of activities, or client forums for the year now. So that's it, everyone. Actually, that's our session for this afternoon. With we'd like to thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Hello.
Thank you, John.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Angel. All right. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.